I started the business 40 years ago, 1985. It's always been on the same mission: apply leading edge technologies to global corporations in the area of sales, marketing, customer service. We have 150 use cases and 300 articles and 200 videos of success stories of companies using these technologies. Caterpillar, we did IKEA, very interesting, successful companies. The chairman of Siemens, the very respected German company, said at CES, he said, every object will have a digital twin by 2027. And the whole concept is, it's really quite amazing. We've been focused on applying AI and spatial computing to global corporations in their quest to improve sales, marketing, and customer service. One of the oldest insurance companies on the East Coast, 200-year-old insurance company based out of Jersey, had an innovative executive who told his company that we will get into VR one way or another. Now, you could ask how he came up with that. I presume he spoke to a couple of his buddies, other executives. He went on a retreat, could have been on the golf course, but he came back determined to try VR in his company. We zeroed in on VR training. We then presented that. We wrote the business case: reduction in time to get somebody on board, reduction in cost, improvement in the confidence of the reps so they could sell more.
How's your day going?
It's going fine. Thank you. How about yourself?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Very good. Where are you calling from?
Washington, D.C.
Oh, nice. I've been there once to renew my Swedish passport.
But you're based where? Not in Sweden.
I'm in San Francisco.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, but Sweden decided to shut down their only West Coast embassy. So now there is one in New York and one in DC. So we
Is
have
that
to
right?
travel.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a pain in the
Well,
neck.
it is. Well, at least I got to see the city. Beautiful city, super clean, very grand. Well, again, great to meet you.
Thank
Before
you.
we dig in, I'll give you a little bit of context.
Yep.
I am the founder of Imperial Arts. We generally partner with B2B SaaS companies to help increase their revenue and profitability, mainly by acquiring new clients. So I might come back to growth and the subject of growth a lot in this conversation. And now this is also why we're interviewing leaders like yourself and previously people at Mercedes-Benz and Cisco to gain deeper insights into the market, also while providing feedback and value back to you in the form of this podcast. So we'll send you a recording and some edited clips. It usually takes 30 to 40 minutes. Does that sound good to you?
That's fine.
Great. So, ISM guide. How about we start with if you can tell us a little bit about your business, your services, and maybe some insights in your business and the role you play within it.
You can do that. Do you want to do that? Are we recording now?
We are rolling.
Okay, good. Okay. So I started the business 40 years ago, 1985, and it's always been on the same mission: to apply leading edge technologies to global corporations in the area of sales, marketing, and customer service. So for the first 25 years or something like that, we helped grow and helped our customers implement customer relationship management, or CRM systems. For the next 10 or so years, we helped companies build what we call digital communities. So an example would be ExxonMobil's lubrication business. We brought together several thousand lubrication engineers from around the world so they could chat with each other and exchange ideas, etc. This was somewhat pre today's technology, but in those days that was considered a leading edge technology. And for the last 5 years, my partner Tim Baharan out of Silicon Valley and myself, we've been focused on applying AI and spatial computing, which we define as XR, VR, and AR, again, to global corporations in their quest to improve sales, marketing, and customer service. The services we offer, we will help companies understand what is AI, what is spatial computing, and how do they apply it to their business. We will help companies to create a business case or a business justification for an investment in any of these technologies. We will help develop a prototype or proof of concept for a technology to an application in their business. If that makes sense to them, we will then help project management, the implementation of a wide or large scale VR, AR, XR, or AI implementation, and then kind of to help make sure that the whole project is successful from beginning to end.
Wonderful. It really sounds like you always have to be at the forefront of technology and maybe even educate your clients on how they can use that within their business. Tell me a little bit about how your clients react after you implement some of these products. What are the reactions and what are the results after they get to know this technology more?
Yeah, you've already alluded to something very important. Often in business, we look to solve a problem. I've got a problem with this or that, and so we fix it. When you're dealing with leading edge technologies, you're not really solving a problem per se. You're really addressing an opportunity. Because if I said to a company, you really should be using artificial intelligence inside your contact center, they might say, well, my contact center runs fine right now. But if you then turned it around and said, there's a growing desire from millennials and Gen Zs to have a much better customer experience when they hit the contact center, and they expect various things to happen quickly and efficiently and so forth, then all of a sudden we have an opportunity to apply AI to the contact center. So you can see it's more of an opportunity. So a couple of examples. We have one of the oldest insurance companies on the East Coast, 200-year-old insurance company based out of Jersey. And here you had an innovative executive who told his company that we will get into VR one way or another in the next year. Now, you could ask how he came up with that. I presume he spoke to a couple of his buddies, other executives. He went on a retreat, could have been on the golf course. I don't really know how it happened, but he came back determined to try VR in his company. And in a typical insurance company, things move very slowly and they're a little bit reticent to go for change. So I headed up a VR day, it was called, back in September of 2023. And we just talked about, I gave the keynote and I managed a couple of workshops where we zeroed in on what is VR, how are other insurance companies and other companies using VR, and what could be some of the applications that this insurance company could use. We broke it out into three workshops, and they each came up with one area that could be helpful. And we then worked with them over the next year, and we developed business case and so forth. One stood out as the leader of the group, and that was the use of VR training in one of their divisions, which was the travel insurance business. And we then presented that. We wrote the business case, which was very impressive. It built in some of the assumptions, for example, of VR training, reduction in time to get somebody on board, reduction in cost, improvement in the confidence of the reps so they could sell more if they were in a sales role as well as a response role. And so it made certain assumptions, and we presented that back in December of 2024, about a year and a bit later. And then the company decided to adopt that approach. We developed a prototype that was an AI-trained avatar. So this company trained its contact center and claims adjusters on 33 modules, training modules. And so we took all 33 modules and we began to put them into the AI component of the avatar that did the VR training. And so obviously you help teach the avatar and the AI data structure, and then you basically give different scenarios to the avatar, and they learn on the typical stuff you do. And then today they're in the process of implementing that as a way of driving down costs and a way of improving revenues. Very, very impressive financials. And they're in the VR business, which gives them a real leg up against other insurance companies who really, again, lag in the use of these latest technologies.
Yeah, I can really see how that might increase and improve training drastically because it instantly becomes a lot more interactive for the employees to learn, and their attention span gets extended, and I bet it will do a lot of difference. What an interesting use case.
Uh,
Um,
you want a
Go
second
ahead,
one, or do you want to? You tell me what you'd like to, but I have a second one as well if you want one. It's up to you.
please go ahead.
So here's another one that I think is also very interesting. So it's one of the largest credit bureaus in the world. There's only three, so you got a 1/3 chance of guessing it right. Um, they called us up, and it's an old buddy of mine, and he said, "Listen, we have this very, very large contact center, and would like to know." Oh, so I should give you some context. The boss said we got to put AI in the contact center, and everybody said, "Well, where should we put it?" And he said, "That's for you to figure out." So we came in. This was a very interesting project, Edvard. We did a complete process map of the beginning to the end of the flow of a customer coming into the contact center by phone, by web, through social media. There's multiple ways, even mail. You know, and so we kind of flowed the process until it got to the agent, if it got to the agent, and then how the agent resolved it, and hopefully we had a satisfied customer. Now we had two very strict goals. One was to drive down costs, and one was to increase customer experience. And this company did a very, very structured job at measuring both. So we had a good baseline and we could really measure against it. So, how do you figure out where to put AI in a contact center? And we used three different methods. So, the first one is we went to the existing vendors, they're SaaS vendors, and we said, and there were many. You had, for example, Salesforce.com. You had, for example, NICE on the telephony system. And there were several others that were used for knowledge management and various pieces, all of them SaaS based systems that kind of worked together but didn't exactly work together. Okay. So what we did is we listened, interviewed, spoke with each of the vendors and said to them, what do you have coming for the contact center that might be applicable to this particular customer? And of course, they're all, at this time trying to figure out what to offer in terms of AI. So they had a bunch of stuff that they wanted to offer, some of which was quite available and some of which was, to come. But they all wanted to sell their wares. So it was very interesting to listen to how they wanted to apply AI to the contact center. That was the first input. The second input was the actual IT and strategy department of this large credit bureau. And here they had their own ideas. For example, how to deflect a call so a call might come in. Was it cost efficient to send it to the agent? The answer was no. It was, 8 cents for a call, I remember, and it was you know, $4 for to getting it to the agent. So it was much more expensive. Or they might look at how do we do an agent recording so that during the call, not after the call, the agent notes were being written up and they could document it long before the call was over. And so they had their input, they had some thoughts. Now, the beauty of their side of this internal IT and strategy department, they knew the systems well. They knew how they were using these various SaaS systems. They weren't being, all the vendors that we interviewed, we understood the game. We're trying to sell, right? But they knew the systems. They knew what they were good at, what they were not so good at. And so the IT and strategy department gave a realistic perspective as to what they felt were areas of potential AI. and then also, what the vendor could or couldn't realistically do. The third input was our knowledge. And so, like I said, we've been in business for 40 years. We looked at AI for the past, 4 or 5 years. We know many cases of AI being used effectively. And so we gave it a real, um, review of the process flow, and not only identified processes that could be enhanced, but more importantly, we looked at where you could drive efficiency, because remember, we had two goals: lower costs and improve the customer experience. So where we could drive both efficiency to drive down costs and introduce a better way of doing something so we could drive up customer experience. And we, in this big, huge process map, we put little yellow smiley faces in 41 areas that we identified as areas that they could use AI. And then we presented that to the executive team, and they really liked, I think, the smiley faces more than anything. But we then developed, to a certain level, each of the 41 opportunities, so that we began to look at, what did they mean in terms of potential value? What did they, in terms of lowering costs? What did they mean in terms of customer experience? And we prioritized. We prioritized the 41, so that we had some level of, if we could only do one, what would we do? If we did a second one, what could we do, et cetera. And then that right now is being implemented within the actual credit bureau, in the same prioritized order that we recommended. Now they're doing that internally. They decided to build it and do it themselves, but that's fine. They're a very large company with a very large IT department. Sometimes people like to do things their own way. So there's just two
Amazing.
cases of, whether it's VR training at an insurance company or whether it's the use of AI in a large global credit bureau. But there's two examples of how we've been able to take a direction from an executive and really make sense of it and put it into some sort of in the case of the insurance company, a VR training program, and in the case of the credit bureau, a prioritized list of AI applications that could drive down costs and increase customer experience.
Yeah, I can imagine at these scales, at these big companies, just implementing a few things that improve efficiency make a huge difference on the bottom line as well. I'm really curious what's really happening in the market that's making the landscape more challenging, or let's say easier to operate right now.
So when you're talking about the marketplace, you're talking about the SaaS, or you're talking about what?
I'm talking about the services that you provide and
I see.
how that affects your business.
Well, you've already alluded to it. Um, there's a lot of education behind all of this. There's a lot of people that think, well, that's great that you can drive down costs for training, and it's great you can bring somebody on board. You can onboard them in half the time, or it's great that we can get retention rates at 80%, or it's great, all the benefits of VR training. But that's a lot of change in the company, and we really have to spend some time on the whole change management side and educating people and readying them for this change. And that's, nothing abnormal, nothing new. But as you kind of come up the technology ladder, in terms of sophistication of technology, it also ups the educational ladder. So one of the big issues is making sure people are educated sufficiently to want to adopt the technology that gives them this benefit. Another big one is well, you can have an executive that's on board driving the initiative, and typically you want that. But the budget does not necessarily come from the CEO office. It'll come from a business unit within the corporation that will fund it. So that business corporation has to buy into the initiative, not just because the CEO said it's a good thing to do, but because it makes business sense to that particular business unit. So there's this, we'll just call it critical review that goes on, not being a slam dunk that it's going to happen, but, again, getting buy-in to the whole approach by the entire, not just now the executive team, but the actual implementers and the users of the system. So this whole kind of change management and organizational readiness, this also is a critical component we're seeing to get people on board. There's another one that's interesting. I don't make too big of a deal of it, but there's a lot of technology out there now. So let's just take the use of smart glasses, okay? And over the last 5 years, there's been tremendous growth in what's available in smart glasses. So you could say we're going to do. Let's just take Honda. Their vice president of research and development was on my panel at the CES 2025, and she told the story that they use Apple Vision Pro, and that they use it around the world to design their cars, and that there's a tremendous benefit when they bring everybody together and they can design as a group. And they now design all their cars from the inside out. So that's the preference of the younger generation, to kind of feel like they're very comfortable inside the car. And so that's how they do it. But to get to that Apple Vision Pro, she said we've gone through, I don't remember what it was, but 10 or 12 different sets of glasses, each of which had its benefits and maybe drawbacks. But there's this enormous amount of technology that's available. And the question is, when do you put the stakes in the ground? So I'll give you another example. It's related, but it's another good example. So smart glasses. Smart glasses right now are hot. It's a topic we see at AWE conferences, at CES conferences, at all the global tech conferences, because it's a very effective way to put on a pair of very nice Ray-Ban Wayfair glasses and look cool and get audio and be able to do video, and even now soon be able to get information coming into one of the lenses so you can really see what's going on. So now the question is this the time to adopt smart glasses? And I'll give you two examples. So a local car dealership, a large Honda dealership here in town, called me up and said, hey, listen, we did a webinar. I heard your webinar on smart glasses. I'm completely turned on. I'd like you to come in and let's just talk about how we could apply it inside the showroom. And it was very interesting. They looked at it potentially as something that a customer could put on when they come in, and the smart glasses track your eyes. So if they look at a certain part of the car to explain the car, that's one way the customer uses it. Another way is a salesperson uses it to remember what they're supposed to say as the person is looking at the car. A very interesting one that doesn't come intuitively is a lot of people come into the showroom and later when they leave, they say, you scratched my car. Well, the scratch was there before they came to the showroom. So they use the smart glasses as a way to take pictures of the car as it comes in and say, I'm terribly sorry. Here's the proof that we didn't scratch your car. But the biggest use that we locked on was the mechanic who looks over a car and makes recommendations, and they take pictures of what needs to be done, and then they send it to the advisor, and the advisor gives it to us, and we say, okay, do this and this, but not that. Well, the way they do that now is through smartphones. And they get very greasy and they drop and so forth, but they take pictures and they eventually send them a little bit blurred or whatever it may be to the advisor. So the thinking was, we'll put smart glasses on and they'll be able to just click and take the same pictures and get them to the advisor. Now the question is this the right time to bite the bullet and make an investment in doing this? And the answer is, I'm not absolutely sure, but in this case, they did it. So it really, there's a lot of technology out there. I'm not saying there's too much technology, but there's some hesitancy as to when do I bite the bullet on the technology.
I hear you. So the first one is reaching the right people in the company and key stakeholders to actually take care of this, because change comes from the top, right? And then the second one is actually picking the right technology for the company. And I completely agree. Like, I used to work at Mercedes-Benz doing concept cars. I'm a designer originally, so I am very familiar with the automobile and the automotive industry. And we used to have so many toys at the office. We had all the VR, all the AR glasses at the time, and it was so much fun. And I understand how important it is for companies like that. As a follow-up question to this, when you look at the next 6 to 12 months in your business, where do you see the biggest opportunity for growth that you're really excited about in your business specifically and for you? And where do you see the biggest gaps that need to be fixed?
Yeah. Um, so opportunities. I think so. When I talk XR, VR, and AR, so augmented reality, virtual reality, extended reality, I automatically build in the integration of AI into that today. Okay, so you can't really do anything in VR, AR, XR without using the insights coming from the AI data structures. Okay, so I'm going to just make sure we say that. The biggest opportunities. I think I wrote an article not too long ago, and I said that classroom training will be dead by 2030. There will be no more classroom training in companies, and the reason is it's so cost efficient to do VR training. It just makes sense, and so this is a matter of, you know, Walmart maybe led the way with now 1 million people that have been trained on glasses. On one of my panels coming up at AWE is Volvo Trucks. They've trained on VR glasses since the pandemic when they couldn't get them in the trucks but had to work worldwide. They've trained tens of thousands of technicians. Duke Energy, another one that's on my panel that I interviewed recently, again, since the pandemic when they couldn't bring people into substations and some of the power grids, they did everything virtually. So, what in the case of Volvo Truck or in the case of Duke Energy, they would have done a digital twin of the Volvo truck, or they would have done a digital twin of the substation, make it available in an immersive environment, and then invite people in. So I think this opportunity on VR training is outrageous. Um, I write a lot about it, and my panel at AWE a couple of weeks is on VR training and so forth. I think it's a huge opportunity. One. The second one that I already mentioned a little bit in passing is digital twins. You know, the chairman of Siemens, the very respected German manufacturing company, said at CES, not this year, but last year, he said every object will have a digital twin by 2027. And the whole concept is it's really quite amazing. I mean, Siemens built a factory for BMW. So, how did they really do it? They took the existing BMW factory and piece by piece they digitized it. And what they were trying to do was to figure out, was the factory being run optimally? Well, and you know this just because of your background with Mercedes, you can't just stop a production line at BMW and try something new. I mean, you can, but it's very cost inefficient. And start it up again and try it, make another change and try it. So they did all of that in the digital twin immersive environment. They would tweak one thing, and of course, you can literally carry the controls and the measurements over into the immersive environment. So you get an output, you get a metric. And if it would look good, you'd continue to do more until you got kind of, let's just say, an optimized factory. What they then did is they took those specs and brought them back to the original factory. They did shut it down and make all these changes, and they came up with an incredibly more productive factory. And so that's just an example of the power of digital twins. There's a fun factor in digital twins from Pokemon Go and all kinds of stuff too, that just allows us to enjoy life a little bit. But I'm really, on the business side, I think there's a tremendous opportunity to optimize things in an immersive environment and then bring them back into reality. And as you know, today we have had an incredible, um, almost a merger between the virtual world and the real world. It's so easy to step into one from the other and back. And so this whole idea of using digital twins as a way of driving efficiency into the real world is just, I think, a tremendous opportunity. So there's two opportunities that I think are particularly powerful. Um, I'd like to then maybe talk a little bit about what you called gaps. Um, I
And
think,
let's focus on those gaps within your business as well. So how where you see the biggest gaps within your business for growth?
yeah, yeah. I think again, I think getting executive buy-in, not just executive and managerial buy-in, is the biggest gap. A lot of people see the value. A lot of people get excited about all of this. But when it comes to putting money on the table and changing the way you used to train with the expectation that it's going to all work fine, they start to get cold feet. So the gap is, again, you could do prototypes or proof of concepts, but to bite the bullet and say we're stopping classroom training on, in the case of the insurance company, on travel insurance, and we're only going to VR training, a lot of companies get really cold feet. So the gap is working with both executives and really much further down in the managerial line, including, for example, HR, or including, for example, the trainer, and getting them to understand what's going on and how that can be of value to them. Another thing that's very important gap is money. So there's never a shortage of money in the world. At least I don't think so. But there is a shortage of allocating money to a cause they believe in. So, there's returns. Everybody talks about returns if you look at the hockey sticks and so forth. But a really good executive says, wait a minute, let's just look at this return very carefully. Let's look at the assumptions, and let's look at whether we really can get a return on investment from our AI or from our VR or from our AR investment. And I think that one of the gaps is going to be, there's a certain amount of, we'll call it trial and error or test and learn that companies will do and have to do to stay competitive. But then when the investments start to come in and you're looking at big numbers, then all of a sudden it was nice to try that. Now, what did you tell me the return is? And how are we going to measure the return? So I think another gap is going to be allocating money, allocating funds. The third one I'd like to mention goes back to technology as well. If you go back to kind of SaaS platforms and you look at some of the technical and infrastructure challenges, the integration of different systems, the integration of data across different data silos, if you want to call it that, that's sometimes more challenging than meets the eye. The SaaS vendor of AI or the SaaS vendor of VR, whatever it may be, they'll tell you, oh, yeah, we can integrate into everything. Well, sure, you can integrate it into everything at a cost and at maybe a potentially, agony. So I think that we have to think through, what does it really mean to integrate some of these new technologies into existing legacy and or other systems that allows for a smooth transition to what you're trying to accomplish in your mission.
That makes complete sense. The messaging here is a really important factor for people to understand, and I would love to understand also how important it is for you to build more strategic visibility right now. You mentioned you're on panels on big conferences and conventions. So whether that strategic visibility would be the branding, the company positioning, or just getting your story out there more clearly to ideal partners or clients, is that something that you're looking into?
No, absolutely. I mean, I've been looking into it for 40 years. It's what's kept me alive. I think a couple of things. So I am a prolific writer. We have a podcast called Business Success in the AI Virtual World. I have a center called the AI and Spatial Computing Resource Center that has 350 use cases and 300 articles and 200 videos of success stories of companies using these technologies. The podcast highlights a company once every 2 weeks. We did Caterpillar last week. We did IKEA the time before. So very interesting, successful companies. So that's another way, is to get people to listen to the podcast and to visit the resource center to learn and see that we have this, intellectual capability. But I think the best way, honestly, is I'd love to get on stage and I'd love to present in front of people. I have been blessed with the capability to make a complex thing rather simple. And that's been appreciated. So I think that between writing, the podcast, the resource center, and on stage presentations. Um, that would be the most effective ways we've found that work. There's always the push on social media to get to new clients and so forth, but that's a longer term play.
Yeah, you mentioned you're out there a lot using your voice, so whether it's with the podcast or at the panels. I'm assuming that at this point you get a lot of inbound sales, so a lot of people contact you after hearing your industry-leading voice. So, as a follow-up to that, in your recent experience, would you say your business development and client acquisition processes are where you want them to be? Or are there still parts that feel slower or heavier than they should?
I think that seriously, because of the shifting environment, technology, and some of the new areas that I'm in, the business development is not where it should be. And any opportunities that you're aware of that could help us, or I'd be deeply grateful.
So where are your current biggest frustrations and why?
Again, I think it's getting the word out to the value of, for example, using AI in the contact center, or doing VR training in place of manual training. Just getting people to listen and buy into the value of that. I think I think that would be the biggest frustration: getting more ears to listen.
And what have you tried before? What didn't work?
Well, I've chaired so many conferences around the world, and I speak for speaker bureaus. Um, Without any question, the best lead source for us is put Bart on stage and let him light it on fire, and watch what happens. So that's without any question the best way. What hasn't worked, um, and has frustrated me, is working with speaker bureaus. So I've always thought that speaker bureaus have great clients, they have great venues, and I just, with the exception of several engagements over the years, I've never been able to break into the speaker bureaus, and I've always thought that was a very good vehicle or channel to get my voice out. I also would be very self-critical. We put a lot of money and effort into LinkedIn and social media. Uh, it hasn't returned what I'd hoped it would. It's not to suggest it hasn't given me great visibility in the business. It's just the phone isn't ringing as a result. The calls aren't being organized as I'd hoped they would.
So what's screaming at you right now? What is number one in your business
In terms of,
in terms of growth and is it building out the kind of product offering you have, or is it getting more clients? What if you had a magic wand that you can wave to
no,
solve
no,
one thing?
it's definitely getting more clients. It's definitely getting more clients, and getting the word out so those clients are aware of the services and aware of the benefits of the technologies, and we have more dialogue. We have more, discussions.
And in when it comes to building or scaling teams to help drive growth, do you prefer doing most things yourself, or are you more focused on finding the right partners and system to take things off your plate?
We are happy to do both. Where it's
And
appropriate, we'll
what?
do certain internal, but where it makes sense, we'll do partnerships wherever and whenever.
Yeah, that brings me perfectly into the next follow-up, and it's what are you responsible? How are you currently spending your day?
Me personally,
Yeah.
um, I'm a real thought leader, so I do an awful lot of thought leadership. So what does that mean? I'm preparing for my podcast on Monday with a new and great podcast. Um, I wrote an article for one of the magazines that I write for on a kind of the future of smart glasses in today's case. Um, I'm the relationship manager with several of our customers, where I just, make sure everything is working well and talk things through when things don't work well. I manage a team of people, obviously, that work for me, to make sure they're driving, hopefully, as efficiently as possible. Um, Kind of what I do during the day.
Wonderful. Yeah, it seems like you're in a unique position where you can provide more value just being you in the business rather than being inside of it at this point.
And you're 40 years at something, Edvard, if you're not enjoying it, then you shouldn't be doing it.
Fantastic. That's a great insight. You know, one thing we love about the leaders that we interview is that they're usually really open to new ways of solving old problems. How do you personally approach finding new strategies or partners to help drive growth in your business?
So it depends on, what we're working on at the time. But for example, for VR training, I knew that we're not an implementation company. So it's critical that we partner with one or more VR technology companies, platforms. And so, I spent a lot of time at CES and at AWE and through my contacts over the years and with my partner out in Silicon Valley, locating potential VR training partners. I actually worked with a Danish company, a Polish company, many American companies, an Israeli company. And so that's just something we knew that we couldn't build out the VR offering if we didn't have a strong backbone that could do the technology. Similarly, let's just take AI in the contact center, which I think has a tremendous potential for both saving money and improving experience. I'm looking for partners that are not necessarily tied to, as I've alluded to earlier on, Salesforce or NICE or knowledge management companies, Zingtree, and so forth. I'm looking for partners that are able to choose across what makes the most sense for the company, and they're going to be they're going to be a technology implementation partner that is objective, but at the same time capable of acknowledging what a company is invested in and trying to leverage as best as possible that investment. So in this case, it's partners to help with successful implementation of AI applied to the contact center. So it depends on the circumstance.
I see. I
Uh,
see.
on
Well, the road is far and long ahead. I mean, it seems like your industry is constantly evolving. Even after 40 years, you're still out here learning how you can implement new technologies, how you can leverage them to help your clients. It's amazing to hear. What a amazing story.
Thank you so much. It's very kind of you.
Is there anything you'd like to share that I didn't ask?
No, I mean I'm of the belief so I'm an entrepreneur, but I'm also a futurist. What I've learned over the years, particularly with these higher technologies, is there's never an ideal opportunity and never an ideal time to put stakes in the ground. But you got to believe that, given how many companies, and if you went to the podcast, there's 39 episodes. Every one of these are fantastic companies. What IKEA has done with these AR and VR and AI, what we just the Caterpillar, we just did Caterpillar has done, what JP Morgan has done, what Mayo Clinic. I mean, these are great companies that have done so well. And if we can learn anything, it is the successful companies put stakes in the ground, don't always get it right at the beginning, but muddle their way through until they've figured it out, and then they become a leader in their respective industries. And so I would encourage anybody listening to this podcast, if we have an opportunity to work together, you'll know that I'm going to push you to put stakes in the ground and give it a try to make sure you too remain competitive and a leader in your respective industries.
That's an amazing and what an amazing ending. So everybody go to ismguide.com, check out Barton and contact them for any future technologies that you need. And with that, I'd like to say thank you so much, Barton. That was great. Thank you so much for sharing all of your valuable insights.
Thank you, Edvard. I had a lot of fun, and you've got a great podcast. Thank you.